Hi everyone, Runthony Runtano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Machine Gun Kelly record, General Admission. Machine Gun Kelly, Cleveland rapper, 2012 XXL freshman, and now on his second full-length commercial record. He made his commercial debut a few years ago, didn't really care for the singles from it, his style lyrically and vocally didn't really stick out to me. The singles didn't really appeal to me either. I just feel like Machine Gun Kelly, for me personally, sort of got lost in the haze of other more promising rappers of that year. His sound just seemed kind of trendy and a little run-of-the-mill, but occasionally he would bust a fast, speedy flow in his most skilled moments. He has a pretty strong Eminem influence. Again, just wasn't really sticking out to me, but now in 2015, with the relative success of his new album, Over Here, I think I'm actually getting a bit of a clearer picture of Machine Gun Kelly, and I decided to kind of just dive headfirst into this new record. Morbid curiosity getting the best of me, a lot of suggestions to check this thing out as well. Right from the get-go, right from the starting track of this album, he is so desperate to stir up some kind of drama. It's just sickening, especially on the instrumental to this opening track, where we get these huge, in the air tonight, like drum fills, and then all of a sudden, these overly epic vocals, which I believe come from Lizzie Hale, and maybe I would have enjoyed her voice in another context, but I just feel like it adds to the copious amounts of cheese that this song brings to the table instrumentally. As far as the lyrics go, while I'm sure that there is a lot of personal importance to much of what MGK is saying on this song, and he does seem to have overgone some struggle and hardship in order to get to where he is, that he does bring up in this track. I just feel like this track is too bogged down into the minutia of his rap career. If you're not really a huge fan of who he is or his backstory or his history, I can't say you're going to get too much out of this track, honestly, because the beat, I think, is awful, and MGK himself, I feel like, can just merely hold his own as far as lyrics and flow goes. He's not wowing me on those fronts. So what really sells this music is the man. It's the backstory. It's the person who this album is named after, and I'm just not really struck by his personality. Sort of like the following track, Alpha Omega, where we get lines featuring Machine Gun Kelly posturing as a real motherfucker and saying, "Let them come at me, I practice jujitsu." This song also features one of a few completely unnecessary and out of place Martin Luther King and King family references. The next one is on the song World Series, I believe, where Machine Gun Kelly basically says he has rap dreams and then evokes the image of Martin Luther King. We have come so far. For one track after another, we get these spacious, somewhat trap-influenced instrumentals with completely horrendous and uninteresting flows and beats. It's like Machine Gun Kelly doesn't know how to hit us with anything but a basic flow for the first part of this album. Spare, one speedy spot here and there. Now, the music actually does change gears on the song Bad Motherfucker featuring Kid Rock, but this track sounds like a horrible country-infused rap rock throwaway from Kid Rock's early 2000s career. Believe it or not, this is where the album takes a turn for the worse. The first song on this album that I actually like, to a degree, I don't even really love it, I just simply like it, is the song Ounce, which kicks off with Machine Gun Kelly and his buddies getting stopped by the cops, and they have an ounce on them, so, what are they going to do? But instead of being a story, he just kind of uses this opportunity to talk a lot of lyrical trash, which is fine. It has one of the catchiest flows on the entire record, and it has one of the sweetest beats on the entire record. But it is one of the shortest tracks on the album, and I can hear in Kelly's voice that this is not one of the most important songs on the album to him. This is not one of the songs on this record where he's trying to make a big, bold, personal, grand statement. And the grandest of these statements actually come in the second half of this record, where the album slows down a little bit, kind of gets personal, maybe a few tears are shed. But even here, this album sort of fails to impress. The song Every Day, I do like the instrumental here, but the groove of it, especially on the verses, sort of reminds me of Kendrick Lamar's Poetic Justice. Though I will say the personal, very personal lyrics on this track make Kelly more relatable than he's been on any other part of this record, which makes me feel like there's no reason for these overly sentimental instrumentals. There's no reason for him to be trying to force these emotions, force this drama on the listening audience. If the story you're telling is down to earth, it's real, and it's seriously emotionally painful, you don't need all of those bells and whistles. The story itself is powerful, which is also the case for the song Story on the Stairs. I think the instrumental here is just a little overly dramatic too, but the tale that he tells on the song of growing up and his estranged mother is actually really heartbreaking. One of the few moments on this record where I was just, wow, man, that's some really heavy shit. But after this, Machine Gun Kelly starts delivering just more huge, overly illustrious, just overwrought instrumentals whose hooks are just super big budget, super booming. Reminds me of Eminem's worst radio singles of the mid and late 2000s. Songs like Gone and Merry Go Round. Or the song A Little More with Victoria Monet, where it sounds like MGK on this track is trying to go as commercial as possible with this hook and these completely gutless drums hanging in the background and this piano that just sounds so Macklemore, but like in the worst way possible. Again, this is my opinion, but it just fails for me on so many fronts. The instrumentals, I think, are the worst part about this album. They're just so desperate to tug at any person's heartstrings. Anybody, doesn't even matter who. There's not even a target audience. Just anyone's emotions will do for these instrumentals. And then on top of them, I don't really care for what a lot of MGK is doing lyrically. Either he's making me just eye roll again and again and again with his one-liners, or I feel like the very good intentions behind his more personal struggles in these tracks get lost in these terrible, glitzy instrumentals, which the features on this album only add to. I will give him props, though, for trying to, pretty much hold this entire album himself. He just has guest singers on this thing. He really tried to just make this whole album about him. He didn't hand over a bunch of, album time to other featured artists. He really just tried to pull through on this thing on his own. And even though I don't like it, I mean, it does really sound like the album he wanted to fucking make, which I totally commend him for that, but I am obviously not who he is making this album for. This record to me is like the worst of every white male hip-hop artist of the 2000s condensed into one album and released 10 years later. I'm feeling a strong 2 to a light 3 on this thing. Transition. Did you give this album a listen? If you did you hate it? What would you rate it? Tell me what I should review next. You're the best. You're the best. You are the best. Have a nice day. It's my birthday today. Hey.